Perfect.
Hello, Adrian.
Welcome to the Q&A session. More people will join us. As always, feel free, everybody in the audience, feel free to ask questions using the chat or the Q&A tab. I want to expand a little bit until some people are asking questions, to expand a little bit on what you said. And that's something that's caught my attention. You were talking about empathy. Why is empathy so important for a manager, especially when scaling up a company?
Yeah, that's a great question, Adrian. And I think empathy is pretty critical for any human, for that matter, not just a manager, to be thoughtful about who you're working with and what their challenges can be, being in their shoes and trying to understand what issues they're running into and how you can basically unblock and help them. So one thing that I have learned as a manager, and at Gusto, we call ourselves people empowerers. We don't call ourselves managers. We are basically there to empower people, to unlock their potential and help them grow to that next level, or even create opportunities for them to grow as an engineer and also as human. And since we are building products for customers, we want an empathetic view to understand why you're trying to build that product and what you're solving for. And it's not just about going off and building it, it's about understanding the pain points and building it right.
So basically, you share this empathy with this empathy mindset with them, and it helps. Yeah. That's a very, very interesting question answer. What are the most important qualities, and these are related, you look for when you are choosing leaders for the new teams?
Yeah. So we have a very thorough, I would say, interviewing process at Gusto. And one thing we try to look for when we bring people on the team, it's not just about bringing the right managers or people empowerers, it's also about bringing the right leaders at senior engineering levels who are individual contributors. We try to understand how they help drive the business. It can be basically about articulating why you're building what you're building and translating that to team goals and translating that to individual goals. It's very important to customize your empowerment based on the level that engineer is at and helping them understand why it is needed. And that is about building driving the business forward and how you can translate everything. The next part is about building the team. You need to make sure as an engineering manager, you can understand how you can set people up for success, what's needed from your perspective to understand the pain points, not just within the engineering team, but also outside of the engineering team and also the customers. So it is a holistic approach to understanding the business and people needs. And sometimes it's unfortunate, you'll have some performance concerns with humans on the team. So making the right decision to guide them through the process so they can be set up for success, articulating what the needs are, and also helping the team understand how they can be collaborative and set everyone up for success on the team. And the third aspect is being self-aware. How aware are they as individuals where they can continue to learn from experiences? No one's perfect. I've made tons of mistakes in my career in the last 20 years. It's about learning from my mistakes. It's not about blame game. It is about how you can prevent yourself from repeating that again. And that is the self-awareness part. And also understanding when you're in a place where you're possibly burn out and taking initiatives to make sure you can lean on the team, trust the team to be there for you as well. And also how curious you are as an individual. It's curiosity that gets you to that next level. Self-learning. So these are the three main axes I normally look for.
Wow, that's very, very interesting. Um, Talking a little bit more about teams, because you hired a lot of locally distributed teams. How do you manage to create bonds between them, between teams that never met in the real world?
Yeah, that's an interesting challenge, and I would say being remote is not new for me or for teams. We've had remote culture for a long, long time. I mean, I've had teams in Slovenia and India in several years, and this is a forcing function, I should say, with pandemic, where everyone is forced to understand what it takes to be thoughtful about supporting each other through, I would say, remote presence. Though you've not met a person, how can you build that trust and rapport? How can you successfully onboard people so they know you as an individual? So there are several things to building an effective team. You need to build that trust to start with. So as a manager, it is, or people empower, it's important for me to understand what activities need to be brought in where the trust can be created within individuals on the team. So there is this open, honest conversation where they can actually have this productive discussion, disagree and commit, and feel open about having these tough conversations. And once committed, they can all think about the end user and the company in mind, and not themselves as individuals. So getting there takes time, but I think being remote makes it yet more challenging, but being thoughtful about it and introducing the right things so people have that opportunity will be critical.
Yeah, you also talked about mistakes. What are the most important mistakes that we usually do when we hire teams while we scale up?
One thing I have realized is about making assumptions. So I called it out in one of the slides. Don't make assumptions. Don't think people know what you're trying to do. They can't read your mind. So articulating it and making sure they understand. And if you have to repeat it several times, it's okay. So never make assumptions. Make sure it's not about the intent, but the impact you have on the individual. Sometimes not sharing some information for you might have the right intent, as in, oh, maybe I'm sharing too much, in which case it's good. But it's important to understand the impact it'll have on that individual if certain information is not shared. So being thoughtful about it and not going with assumptions, and making sure you're there for others and not just for yourself is very critical.
A question is from the audience. You seem to be a manager who really emphasizes the human relations within organizations. Are there any books that helped you evolve in these fields of being empathetic? Or is it something that doesn't?
I'm embarrassed to say I have not read any management books. It's all about what I've learned as a human. I mean, I grew up in India, moved to US 20 years ago. My parents were in a field which worked on women empowerment, people empathy. So I grew up with those values, what it takes to be a good human. It's not about egos. It's not about the caste system or the classes. It's about understanding what is really needed for you to be that person who's there for others and not just for yourself. So I would say it's all self-learning and also learning from a lot of great people around me, including my parents, my siblings, and my husband, who's been my friend forever. I'll definitely look it up and get back to you. I'll get some recommendations. What are great books?
I think that's amazing. That's even more interesting than having a ton of books that you can, especially when you are managing such large teams. For example, how has culture, Gusto's culture, help when you you're in a very, very fast growing environment?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And Gusto, one of the reasons I joined Gusto is because of its culture. We are a people first culture. When we say people, it's not just about people within the organization. It's also people outside of the organization who are not using your product, and also people who are using your product. So given that it's a people first culture, we want to make sure everyone who's on the team feels included, has the right representation, belonging, and is given the opportunity to be vocal. We all come from different backgrounds, so having that voice in the room is not as comfortable for everyone. So being thoughtful about it and being intentional and making sure everyone is aware. So bringing that awareness. So we have a program called RISE, which I mentioned in my presentation, which is about representation, inclusion, equity, and also making sure we have the right social impact as an organization, so we can bring about changes. So culture is very, very important to continue to grow your teams and be very thoughtful about what you're building.
And one last question from me is, what do you like the most about Gusto?
There are several angles. Of course, given that it's a people first company, I love working with my team members. Of course, it's a bummer we can't meet each other in person, but building that bond with everyone, so you understand what works with them and what doesn't, what the strengths are, so you can continue to build on that strength and also work with them through that journey of being self-aware and addressing the weaknesses. So the people aspect is one. The second is also how fast Gusto makes decisions, as in, though we are growing as a company, it's not just making it very heavy with processes. We have pretty amazing leaders here who are very thoughtful about not blocking people from moving fast. We definitely focus on the outcome, the impact, and it's not just the effort when you're building the product. And how empathetic engineers and every other product person is in understanding what needs to be built. So there are several aspects to it that makes it a great company to work for me.
And one last question also from the audience. During your presentation, you've mentioned that Gusto was hiring. Do you find more information about that on your website or where?
Yeah, definitely on the website. It's a very generic job posting. And I'm on LinkedIn too. Shoot me a message. I'll be happy to connect you to the right people.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time, Rohini. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Adrian. It was a pleasure. Take care. Bye.